And our next guest just got back from Russia, where he interviewed the country's strongman president. With us now is the editor-in-chief of Bloomberg, John Micklethwait. John, we're going to play a clip from your interview in just a second, but I want to ask you just overview, since almost everyone watching the show will have not spent time with Vladimir Putin. What is it like to be in his presence? Is he like a normal person? Is there something different about him?
I met him a couple of times before on kind of private, off-the-record things. And there, strangely, in some ways, he's more kind of macho in private things than he is there. He was very courteous. Sits there. It's more the impact he has on people around him. People scurry around, retinues, buildings are cleared at a level that even Obama can't really manage. Right. And so it's more the implicit power, almost medieval in that way.
Okay, let's look at...
Heilemann-like.
Yeah, I hear you. Let's look at when you asked President Putin if he'd be happy to see Donald Trump elected as the next president of the United States.
You know, we can't answer for the American people. After all, with all the shock tactics of not only one but the other candidate, they are both using shock tactics, just teaching their own way. They are smart, they are very smart people. They understand which buttons you need to press a bit so that the voters of the United States understand, feel and listen to them.
So it seemed to a lot of people in the United States that Putin clearly prefers Trump to Clinton. Well, did that come through in this interview?
Well, that was my point. Putin was saying, look, I don't care, it's for the American people to choose. But you look at the record, you know, Clinton, Putin has said he thinks Clinton was trying to get rid of him in 2011, organising protests against him. But for him, it's beyond an existential crisis if somebody gets overthrown in Russia. By contrast, Donald Trump has pretty much, as I put it, has had a more or less sort of almost homoerotic sort of descriptions of Putin. Virtually everything. He's a fantastic man, he can do business. Recently he's got a bit tougher. So the idea that Putin would sit there and say, I really don't care between this woman who wants to overthrow me and this man who seems at various times to be just a tiny bit in love with parts of me, that struck me as incredible. Yeah. But I think there is an element. Putin, for all the bluster, he loves stirring things up. But the advantage of Hillary is that I think he knows roughly how to deal with her. And from his point of view, maybe having a Hillary who he's sullied a bit is quite a good way to go ahead.
Right. So there's obviously the place where this comes to bear is on the question of the leaks. And you asked him about the allegations that Russia was involved in hacking the Democratic Party's emails. Here's what he had to say about that.
Is that really important? Does it even matter who hacked this data from the campaign headquarters of Mrs. Clinton? The important thing is the content that was given to the public. There should be discussion about this, and there is no need to distract the public's attention from the essence of the problem by raising some side issues connecting with the search for who did it. But I want to tell you again, I don't know anything about it, and on the state level, Russia has never done this.
So Hillary Clinton clearly paying attention to your interview because she yesterday responded to what Putin said.
When Putin was asked about it, he could barely muster the energy to deny it, if any of you saw that. In fact, he went on to say it was a good thing that the DNC had been hacked. And, of course, the intelligence consensus is it was hacked by Russian intelligence. So we are facing a very serious concern. We've never had a foreign adversarial power be already involved in our electoral process with the DNC hacks.
So I thought it was extraordinary how Putin responded to your question, very cavalier and kind of basically having said to you, oh, I don't really care who wins, basically then went on to say, but the fact that the Democratic Party's email got hacked was a great thing. Obviously, that's damaging to her. So just parse all of that.
I think there's an element of, look, no hands. I had nothing. It's almost he's playing with it. It works very well. It adds to his reputation as being someone who could do these sort of things. Right. On the other hand, he has got a point, is that Hillary is managing or trying very hard to turn the conversation from what is in these emails and what they say about her personality to the question of who actually hacked them. So there's an element, there's, like many things Putin says, there's a kernel of truth. The interesting thing about Putin is he is a very, very good analyzer of the strengths and weaknesses of people. That's where he really stands out. And I think he senses this as a weakness for Hillary, so he's just pushing in the way that he does, very opportunistically.
It's hard to say through the translation, but does he seem to have a complete handle on what's going on with the American election?
I think he follows it. I think it's a very strange relationship. You imagine, his version of Russia is a Russia that is equal to America. He grew up, the Russia that he still has a very obvious sort of harkening back to is one where the biggest meeting every year was Russia meets America to discuss missiles or whatever. Right. And that's the world he wants to be seen at. So when he looks at America, it's with a mixture, some element of jilted spouse in it. He's angry about various things America has done, and he goes on about the shock tactics and all these things which he would merrily use himself. But at the same time, there's an element that he wants to be a player in that.
Did he seem to welcome questions about the American election, or be annoyed by them, or?
No, I think he expected them. The only condition of the interview was we had to ask him at the beginning about the economic forum and the G20. After that, he said, "You can ask me anything." He doesn't. He's got more confident in that way.
There's a good reason why usually heads of state stay out of other countries' domestic politics, because if they put the leading in one direction and then the other person wins, they have problems down the line. Is he not at all concerned, and is it your sense that he's not at all concerned about the likelihood that Hillary will be president and he will have been seen as being on Trump's side?
Well, to some extent, I think he's already factored that in. It's not, I think he more wants to be seen as someone who can cause problems. You look at the way he's handled Obama, there are lots of things he's done which I bitterly disapprove of. But actually, in terms of the way he's done it, he's been opportunistic. Whenever he thinks Obama's left a vacuum, he's jumped in. And I think he thinks that's the same way he can deal with Hillary. You might remember also he brings up the same thing that people on Trump's side are trying to say, that he gave money to the foundation. So which also is a clever way of reminding viewers that Hillary has one or two problems in that area too.
We're almost done. And again, I know it's hard through the translation, and we all see kind of the coldness and some negative traits through those clips. Did he exhibit any traits in the room that were, you'd say, positive human traits? Was he funny, charming, solicitous?
He didn't. When you score a blow at him, he smiles with some degree of "I'll get you later." He did. We asked him, for instance, about I talked about the dynasties in America, the Bushes, the Clintons, and whether his daughters, which are a subject you're not allowed to talk about in Russia, whether that was something that he'd like to follow. And actually, he talks quite, as a father would, about the fact he doesn't, I think, particularly want his daughters to follow the same life as he did. But that, again, has some degree of Shakespearean monarch element about it. He is, the interesting thing about him, he has sat there, he's run one of the most difficult countries in the world for 16 years. There's very few people who manage to do that, especially in a place where if you lose power, it's somewhat more brutal.
Right. John, great interview. Thank you. John Micklethwait, thank you again. You can see John's full interview with Vladimir Putin. It's online right now at our website, BloombergPolitics.com.